Hello and welcome to #moleg. I'm Dwayne Lester, editor of the Missouri Torch. For the next half hour, we're going to look at what's going on in Missouri politics online, highlighting the best and the worst from Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, the blogosphere, and anywhere else we can find a conversation online where people are talking about Missouri politics. #moleg is used mainly on Twitter as a way to categorize tweets that relate to Missouri politics, so I thought I'd just co-opt it for this show, since that's basically what we're doing here. So, let's get started with a vicious rhino attack on Facebook. It seems Senator Ryan Silvey recently met with some fellow progressives on how to get Medicaid expansion to move forward in 2015. And when I say Ryan Silvey, I mean Kit Bond, and by Kit Bond, I of course mean the Chamber of Commerce. And by the Chamber of Commerce, I mean a bunch of crony capitalists looking to squeeze a little more milk from the teat that is the federal government. Anyway, he apparently suggested that people reach out to legislators who are opposed to or maybe support Medicaid expansion to try and gauge where everyone's at. And according to the Springfield Newsletter, there's no bigger roadblock in Missouri than Senator Rob Schaaf of St. Joseph. Somehow Senator Schaaf got a hold of the email and posted it on Facebook. It reads, subject, follow up to Senator Silvey meeting. Team Medicaid expansion. That's cute, their team. We wanted to follow up on Senator Silvey's request during our strategy meeting yesterday. He specifically asked all of us to branch out and communicate with members of the House of Representatives in a systematic way. The goal is for each of us to take 5 state reps and gauge their level of support or opposition to Medicaid expansion at present and get the following message out there. Why can't we have a discussion about Medicaid expansion? Oh, come on, guys. Can't we just talk about expanding the government and implementing Obamacare in Missouri? Forget about all that every time a government expands, liberty contracts nonsense. That's so Reagan era. Please? I mean, we'll do it conservatively or something. Conservative governors in Tennessee, Alabama, Utah, and Wyoming have stepped forward in the last couple months working on fixing Obamacare in their state with funding through reforming Medicaid. The letter continues, conservative Republican legislatures in Arkansas, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Dakota have all approved Medicaid reforms funded by Medicaid expansion. Why would conservatives in those states do this? Maybe because they're not conservatives. Maybe because they're crony capitalists. Maybe because they're progressives or they're ignorant, but I repeat myself. Skipping ahead in the letter, 2 rural hospitals in Missouri have closed in the last 6 months, and more are under severe financial pressure, laying off and shutting down important services. Yeah, because that wasn't happening before Obamacare, except when it was. Now, this talking point deserves a little extra attention because it's a powerful talking point. No one likes the idea of a rural hospital closing. But will expanding Obamacare prevent that? It hasn't yet. In fact, it may be causing more to close than before. From those right-wing hacks at USA Today, they write, since the beginning of 2010, 43 rural hospitals with a total of more than 1,500 beds have closed. That's according to data from the North Carolina Rural Health Research Program. The pace of closures has quickened from 3 in 2010 to 13 in 2013 and 12 already this year. Georgia alone has lost 5 rural hospitals since 2012, and at least 6 more are teetering on the brink of collapse. Each of the state's closed hospitals served about 10,000 people, a lot for remaining area hospitals to absorb. Now, critics say the ACA is also accelerating the demise of rural outposts that cater to many of society's most vulnerable. These hospitals treat some of the sickest and poorest patients, those least aware of how to stay healthy. Hospital officials contend that the law's penalties for having to readmit patients soon after they're released are impossible to avoid and create a crushing burden. So Sylvie wants us to just ignore the fact that Obamacare may be making the situation worse. Let's just bring in some more government. That'll fix everything. Always does, right? The email closes with, thanks for your help, Rob Monsees and Brendan Cossett, XOXO. For the record, Rob Monsees is the chief lobbyist for the Missouri Hospital Association in the state capitol, and Brendan Cossett is the Director of Government Affairs and General Counsel for the Missouri Primary Care Association. Now, after Schaaf posted that letter, it garnered 171 comments as of this recording, first coming from Renee Holshoff, who made several snide and condescending comments towards Senator Schaaf. Fun fact number 1. Renee Holshoff is the wife of former Republican candidate for governor in Missouri, Kenny Holshoff. What's Kenny doing these days? According to his Wikipedia page, he's working for the Polzinelli law firm based in Jefferson City, Missouri. And what do? Well, according to Oklahoma's News 9, Polzinelli represents a wide variety of healthcare clients, including hospital and health systems, clinical resource organizations, physician groups, home health agencies, hospice providers, and senior and long-term care facilities. In 2014, Polzinelli was ranked as the second largest healthcare practice by the American Health Lawyers Association and third largest healthcare practice by Modern Healthcare. You seeing a trend here? Fun fact number 2, according to Chapin White of the Center for Studying Healthcare System Change, Medicare and Medicaid on average represent 50 to 60% of a hospital's book of business. Seems a lot of people who want Medicaid expansion look to make money off of it. Which brings us to our word of the day, corporatism. Corporatism is a set of economic and political policies whereby the government confers a great deal of laws and regulations that benefit businesses and in particular large corporations that are able to lobby government officials, oftentimes at the expense of individual rights and liberties and undermining free market capitalism ideals. Not only does it benefit large corporations, but it also benefits large nonprofit organizations like hospitals and their administration, which is what Senator Schaaf began drilling into the heads of people who read his Facebook page. Using data from GuideStar.com, Schaaf began posting screenshots of Form 990s for various nonprofit hospitals around the state. To prove what? Mainly that these bigger charity hospitals didn't need to loot more from the American taxpayer to stay afloat, especially when you see what they are paying their people. For example, John Bluford received around $1.2 million in 2011 for running Truman Medical, a charity hospital. Stephen Lipstein runs BJC Health System, a St. Louis not-for-profit hospital system. According to Schaaf, his salary equates to $3,142 an hour, and he's an ardent supporter of Medicaid expansion. Schaaf also pointed out that all the members of Cox Medical Center in Springfield, along with Mercy, their competitor, who make 6- and 7-figure incomes. Hint, there's a lot of people at those two hospitals making 6- and 7-figure incomes. Finally, Schaaf pointed out the plight of the rural hospital like Lake Regional in Osage Beach. Their fearless leader, Michael Hens, makes just under $500,000. How does he manage? But all these people want Medicaid expansion because they care about poor people, right? It has nothing to do with the fact that they've come to rely on government payments and cost shifting and wanting to preserve their sweet, sweet salaries. Am I right? We need to think about this before we act. Every time government expands, liberty contracts. Remember that. Now let's switch over to YouTube. The Show Me Institute recently posted a video telling the story of Angel, a young lady in Missouri who benefited from the educational opportunities provided by school choice. Let's take a look.
In June of 2013, the Missouri Supreme Court upheld a state law that had been hung up in the courts for years. It said all students have the right to an accredited education. Finally, students in the unaccredited Normandy and Riverview Gardens could choose to attend better schools, but controversy soon followed.
I deserve to not have to worry about my children getting stabbed or taking a drug or getting robbed, because that's the issue.
I am totally appalled that we have now gone back to 1954.
A deeply divided community on the issue of education and which students will soon be side by side in the classroom.
More than 20 bills were introduced in the 2014 Missouri legislative session to address the issue of unaccredited schools. Most would have reduced the number of transfer students or stopped the transfer program entirely. The discussion focused on the impact on the school districts, and many lost sight of what the transfer program was all about: students like Angel Matthews. Through the transfer program, Angel's mom, Shauna, was able to enroll her daughter at Kirkwood High School, one of the top high schools in the state.
When we heard about the transfer being opened up for the Riverview Gardens area, that was a blessing. So we immediately jumped on that.
What I want for my kids is for them to have a good stepping stone, because in reality, high school is just their stepping stone. College is so big in my house. I want all my kids to be able to attend college.
When I first walked into the school, visiting the campus and doing the registration, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so big and beautiful. The campus is beautiful. And then when I got there, I took on a whole bunch of hard classes like AP Psych, AP Lang, Honors, Chem.
In addition to the honors classes, Angel ran track and made the cheerleading squad.
Angel took AP courses and didn't realize that it was at college level, and she only had to drop one. My baby is excelling in her classes. She took Chinese. Who get an A in Chinese? Come on now.
Angel expects to graduate from Kirkwood, and from there,
I want to go to college. I have not yet decided on a college I want to go to, but college is my #1 option. The fact that I could walk away from the school saying that I actually learned something was special. The fact that I walked away from the school meeting new people and another part of life that I wasn't accustomed to, and there's so many opportunities at Kirkwood. There's so much that I haven't opened my eyes up to until I was at Kirkwood. It definitely was worth it.
It's easy to get caught up in the politics of the transfer program, but for Angel's mother, the takeaway is clear.
The opportunities that we're getting out of this program are awesome, and we would be wrong to deny any kid this opportunity.
Come back to you. Come back to you.
Now, who would want to stop Angel's mom from getting to choose where to send her daughter to school? Who would stand in the way of school choice? I mean, besides the teachers' unions and most of the Missouri Democratic Party. You know, the pro-choice crowd. Let's be frank, choice only matters when it comes to abortion. Now let's go to the leftist blogosphere, where you can find some of the most intellectually dishonest and shallow content on the internet. Mo Rage, one of my favorites, gives us a great example of what passes for intellectualism to a leftist. Check out this graphic he posted. 11 million new jobs, record low uninsured rate, best economic growth since the Clinton era, shrinking deficit, thriving car economy, booming manufacturing, $2 a gallon gas, and this is a failed presidency, right? And note, it's by Occupy Democrats. That's like a double whammy of economic illiteracy. Now let's just dissect this nonsense. The 11 million new jobs figure comes from President Obama. Now, I could look deeper at it, maybe debunk some of it, but let's go ahead and give that number to him. Here's a good question. What kind of jobs are being created? Now, according to the right-wing nuts at the New York Times, mainly fast food jobs. Quote, in essence, the poor economy has replaced good jobs with bad ones. That is the conclusion of a new report from the National Employment Law Project, a research and advocacy group analyzing employment trends 4 years into the recovery. Fast food is driving the bulk of the job growth at the low end. The job gains there are absolutely phenomenal, said Michael Evangelist, the report's author. Higher wage industries like accounting and legal work shed 3.6 million positions during the recession and have added only 2.6 positions during the recovery. But lower wage industries lost 2 million jobs, then added 3.8 million. Now here's the bonus. The average household's take-home pay has declined through the recession and the recovery. to 51,000 in 2012 from 55,600 in 2007. That's after adjusting for inflation. Nice work, Obama. Next, record low uninsured rate. Now, just so I understand this, statists pass a law literally forcing Americans to buy health insurance, and we're supposed to celebrate the fact that people actually followed the law. Wow. If that were the whole story, it would still be bad news, because it's still an unconstitutional use of force against a once free people. Forget John Roberts. You know I'm right. But it isn't the whole story. Who cares if you have health insurance if you can't get care? According to the Associated Press, a survey this year by the Physicians Foundation found that 81% of doctors describe themselves as either overextended or at full capacity, and 44% said they plan to cut back on the number of patients they see, retire, work part-time, or close their practice to new patients. At the same time, insurance companies have routinely limited the number of doctors and providers on their plans as a way to cut costs. The result has further restricted some patients' ability to get appointments quickly. One purpose of the new health law was connecting patients, many of whom had never had health insurance before, with primary care doctors to prevent them from landing in the emergency room when they are sicker and their care is more expensive. Yet nearly 1 in 5 Americans lives in a region designated as having a shortage of primary care physicians, and the number of doctors entering the field isn't expected to keep pace with the demand. The Association of American Medical Colleges projects the shortage will grow to about 66,000 in a little more than a decade, as fewer residency slots are available and as more medical students choose higher paying specialty areas. So yay, we've created a system of medicine that is destroying medicine, and the left is celebrating it, mainly because it's getting them closer to their real goal, single payer. Up next, best economics growth since Clinton era. Well, gee, I guess we can just, dismiss this Daily Caller article from August of this year that said the U.S. economy has grown very slowly in the years since the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. After 4 years of slow growth, the latest data reveals the U.S. economy shrank at 2.9% annual rate during the first quarter of 2014. That figure has been widely reported, but here are some figures that have not been reported, and they are quite eye-opening. Over the first 5 years of Obama's presidency, the U.S. economy grew more slowly than during any 5-year period since just after the end of World War II, averaging less than 1.3% per year. If we leave out the sharp recession of 1945 to 46 following World War II, Obama looks even worse, ranking dead last among all presidents since 1932. No other president since the Great Depression has presided over such a steadily poor rate of economic growth during his first 5 years of office. But hey, the economy is surging now, right? Enter the Politico. The growing pile of economic data that Obama and his aides believe demonstrate his success digging the country out after the financial collapse hasn't broken through, and they know it. Wages haven't kept up. Prices keep rising. And Obama seems to be presiding over a period which Americans' lives are getting more difficult. Gee, you think? Maybe it's because the only jobs being created are part-time at McDonald's. But at least the deficit is shrinking, right? That's a good thing. Well, not really. What's important is why the deficit is shrinking. See, there's only 2 ways that can happen. Either the government cuts spending or they increase taxes. Guess which one the Obama administration did? Yeah, they choose to loot more from the American taxpayer, and the left celebrates that. Nice. Meanwhile, Obama can boost a thriving car industry and booming manufacturing, right? Booming manufacturing? Where? Believe it or not, it ties to the next talking point, $2 a gallon gasoline. See, the oil and gas industry are considered manufacturing, and the shale oil boom has created tons of jobs in manufacturing. This boom, along with other factors in the market, has led to the price of oil to drop, resulting in the cost of gasoline to drop as well. And how much of this can President Obama take credit for? Zero. Zilch. Nada. President Obama has been one of the most anti-oil presidents in history. All of the increases in oil production have been on private land. In fact, The Daily Caller reports that according to the Congressional Research Service, the share of oil and gas production coming from federal lands has plummeted from 2009 to 2013. Oil production on federal lands fell by 11% over this time. Total federal oil production is still 316,000 barrels per day below 2010 levels of 1.9 million barrels per day. The energy industry and federal lawmakers have long criticized the Obama administration for saddling energy producers with lengthy permitting times and environmental review processes. This graphic is what passes for intellectual content on a leftist blog. Anywhere else, it would be called propaganda. But it's a great example of the depth of thought on the left. Either the author took this at face value, or he thinks so little of his readers, he expects them to. It's kind of sad, really. Now, I'm pleased to share with you Missouri's own Gary Nolan and his YouTube series, Nolan Knows. This episode, Gary starts out with a lightning round and then ends by lambasting New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Let's take a look.
Welcome to Nolan Knows. It's time for the lightning round, and we're going to start with the Pentagon returning 4 detainees from Guantanamo back to Afghanistan. You know what? It's really a mess down there. Why don't they just try these people and figure out whether they're going to keep them or release them? At least go through the process, because they're in limbo right now. Next on the list, North Korea is threatening the United States over the Sony hacking because we're saying we're going to get even. I'm not 100% convinced that it's North Korea, but I'm pretty sure that it is. And you know, if they had dropped a bomb on Sony Studios, it would be an act of war. I think this is an act of war. There ought to be a solid response. Next on the list, if you want to run for the White House, it'll cost about $1 billion. This is usually what they start talking about when they want to talk about campaign finance laws. Campaign finance laws are just incumbency protection laws. It's my money, I earned it, I should be able to give it to whomever I choose, and I shouldn't need the government's permission to do it. Next on the list, deportations. They're down. Illegal immigration, they say, is up. Democrats and Republicans will never resolve this. As long as there's a demand for labor created by the federal government with all of the programs that it has to pay people not to work, this problem isn't going away. Next in the lightning round, police are on alert because just this weekend, 2 police officers in New York were killed. All had to do with grand jury decisions in New York and in Ferguson, Missouri. Wow. If I were in law enforcement, I'd be wearing a bulletproof vest and I'd be situationally aware at all times. Take nothing for granted. Apparently, the idiots are on the loose. Next on the list is Senator Rand Paul. He thinks the president may have something with his change in attitude toward Cuba, and I agree with both Senator Paul and, surprisingly, with the president. We've been doing this embargo thing with Cuba since 1961, and what have we accomplished? Absolutely nothing. But think what the Castro brothers have been telling their people. They've been living in abject poverty, and the Castro brothers have been saying it's because of the United States. It's because they've got this embargo. They're isolating us. That's why you're living in this abject poverty. Well, he can't hide behind that now. Also on the list, North Korea. They've decided they're not going to go to the United Nations Security Council meeting on human rights violations in North Korea. I haven't done a lot of homework on this, but I'm not surprised. These people don't care about lives. They don't care about liberty. They're certainly not going to pay any attention to anything the United Nations says to them. It's totally a waste of time. Story of the week this week on Nolan Knows is Sony. As you all know by now, Sony was hacked, most probably by North Korea. They hacked their emails. They embarrassed much of upper management at Sony. They've gotten all kinds of information about pay stubs, social security numbers, really making a mess out of Sony's privacy. The reason ostensibly behind this is because Sony was going to release a movie that I wouldn't have paid a dime to see anyway, about the North Korean leader being assassinated. It's another stoner movie. It doesn't interest me in the slightest. But the result of all the pressure, including threats on the movie theaters, has caused Sony to pull the movie back. Well, I don't know that I would have done that, but I think I might pay to see the movie now just because of North Korea. One of the president's arguments is that he wouldn't have pulled the movie back either. But why then doesn't the president play the movie at the White House? Why doesn't he screen it there? The people in North Korea have no tolerance for freedom or liberty, and if they're the ones who are threatening us and we decide to retaliate, I don't even know how we do it via the internet. At least we have computers to hack. What are you going to hack in North Korea? If you look at a satellite picture of North and South Korea at night, you get an indication of just how poor North Korea is, how poorly socialism and communism works, because there's just a couple of lights on, just a couple, a handful, and you see South Korea is just blazing. They've got electricity and computers and all the modern stuff. I don't know how you get even with North Korea for hacking our computers when they probably don't use computers for anything but hacking our computers. But I do think it was an act of war, and I do think Sony ought to release the movie. And that's my story of the week. This week's If They Were Here is Mayor de Blasio. The reason I'm wearing a black shirt today instead of my usual white shirt is I'm in mourning. 2 police officers died in New York City. They were assassinated simply for being police officers. And the reason I've chosen Mayor de Blasio for my If They Were Here is because of his statement after a grand jury refused to indict a police officer for doing his job. Instead of Mayor de Blasio getting out in front of the cameras, getting out in front of the city and saying, look, if you really want to protect yourself, when the police tell you you're under arrest, put your hands out and let them handcuff you. Let them take you away. Instead of saying, don't resist arrest because that leads to violence and you could get hurt, or police officers could get hurt, he's admonishing his son about the dangers of law enforcement. Well, Mayor de Blasio, if you were here, I would tell you how wrong you are. I would tell you that what you should have admonished your son to do is not resist arrest, not fight the police. If the police make a mistake and they arrest you and they don't have grounds or they do something wrong, take it up in court. Instead, de Blasio, what you did is you attacked law enforcement. The people you call on when somebody is raping or stabbing or shooting or robbing or burning, the people you count on to save your life, those are the people you insulted. And I frankly think that attitude, which by the way is shared by the Attorney General and the President and a bunch of other way far left-wingers, is what's caused all of this violence and animosity against law enforcement. I know we can't hold you accountable criminally, but I think you ought to step up in front of the microphone, apologize to police, apologize to law enforcement, explain to your friends and your audience that the grand jury did what they had to do based on the evidence they had. That's what I would tell Mayor de Blasio if he were here.
Well, that's going to do it for this week. Please feel free to send me tips by tweeting links with the hashtag MolegShow or emailing them to me at Dwayne@the-Missouri Torch. For hashtag Moleg and the Missouri Torch, I'm Dwayne Lester. We'll see you soon.